A wounded and exhausted white mage needs to heal in order to prove his worth, fearing imminent death. The image presents the Yggdrasil's Labyrinth, an SSS-ranked dungeon, considered one of the 7 most difficult labyrinths in the world. It is mentioned that all 7 labyrinths are unexplored dungeons where secret treasures await. 1 month prior, a group had conquered an A-ranked dungeon. Now, having earned the necessary qualifications to challenge SSS-ranked dungeons, they prepare to face the Yggdrasil Labyrinth. The narrator informs that their group, called Gunkino Dongwa and also ranked A, is composed of highly capable members. A black mage, descended from an ancient witch, is observed. She faces the sword saintess Yahello, a spellcaster wielding 2 swords, using lightning and wind attributes to enhance them. Yahello notices an opening in the mage's attack. The great sword warrior Suglenst is described as a physically large and muscular defender, capable of delivering powerful strikes. He shows intense pleasure in the feeling of cutting through flesh. The group's leader, Loki, is introduced as a genius excelling in all aspects, including combat power, leadership, and magic. He orders something to burn. A young mage attempts to cast a healing spell on an injured warrior. However, it is revealed that he has a fatal flaw as a healer. Something prevents him from fully utilizing his magical abilities. As he struggles against his limitation, he suffers physically and emotionally, trying to fulfill his role. Amidst his frustration, he collapses from exhaustion. The warrior, instead of thanking him, rejects him with disgust and contempt, showing impatience for his weakness. Humiliated and wounded, the mage realizes that this is the worst day of his life. Loki is called. Someone asks if he is all right. Ray offers a drink, explaining that it is a remedy to recover from fatigue, and the person will feel better after drinking it. The person apologized to Loki for making him use his item. Someone comments on Loki's kindness, while another considers him a burden. Suglenst is mentioned. Ray is told to just rest until he can move again and to ignore them. A character reflects on their fatal flaw. The narrator reveals that the mage will use all his magical power in a single healing. This limitation of healing only 1 person at a time is considered a fatal flaw for a white mage, severely restricting strategic options. It is explained that once his magical power is exhausted, he will also lose the ability to move. His magical power is below average, and all of it will be consumed in a single healing. Compared to the other members, his combat ability is negligible, and he has no attributes to make up for this deficiency, being considered pathetic. A character thinks of themselves as useless, and remembers being invited by Loki to join the group. In another scene, Ray is asked if he can move now. He responds that he is fine now and will get up immediately, even though he is still recovering enough to walk. Ray expresses not knowing why he was invited. One character thinks that this group is the only place they belong. Another expresses their happiness at being chosen. In contrast, someone finds another person inconvenient and sighs. The group's goal is to reach the lowest floor of the Yggdrasil's Labyrinth and be the first to conquer it, obtaining the secret treasure. They believe there won't be much difference there, as they easily overcame an A-ranked dungeon and expect it to be easy. However, at that moment, they still didn't know something important. A character decides they need to give their all to avoid hindering the others. On floor 125, the true horror of the SSS-ranked dungeon reveals itself. Someone exclaims, "Damn." Another character, panting, asks what those creatures were, realizing that the monsters were at least as powerful as S-ranked monsters, if not stronger. A character expresses surprise at the strength of the monsters, while another admits they hadn't anticipated this. It is noted that all the monsters they had faced so far were rank A, and the difference between rank S and rank A is compared to heaven and earth. Faced with the situation, someone declares that it is impossible to defeat them. Someone thinks this is the worst place, and doesn't want to die here. Another wonders why such strong monsters suddenly appeared, specifically on this floor. A third observes that they haven't spoken a single word. Someone thinks they don't want to be blamed for this. It is explained that the situation is due to the extreme stress they are under. A person calls attention with a "hey." Another claims to know something and suggests they go back, not wanting to imagine what would happen if they encounter the monsters again. She says they don't need to tell her, but asks how they will return. It is narrated that they progressed easily until this floor, and before they realized it, they were on a floor with no return. It is assumed they will have to use that, except for one particular method. It is confirmed they can no longer return using only their powers. He wonders if that stone is the one they found on the lowest floor of the A-ranked dungeon. Another exclaims, realizing they could escape using that. Indeed they could. It is explained that the teleportation stone is a magical stone with the power to teleport the user to any location. However, once used, the magical power within the stone will disappear, and it cannot be used again. It is stated that no one will hesitate to choose life when faced with the option between their own life or money. This is because no matter how valuable an item is, life is always more precious. It is said that an item inside a box is worth thousands of gold coins, if sold, and is a very rare item. They have 5 of these items, enough for all of them. He thinks it is time. It is declared that he will be banned from the group. He expresses confusion. She wonders what he just said. Repeating the word banned? Another character asks why he is distracted. He stammers a "but why?" and says he heard. She asks if he didn't hear what she said. A stone flies toward him, hitting the wall and grazing it. Another character questions if they really need to explain the situation. She expresses irritation at his slow thinking. Another character finds him repulsive and perverted. He tries to justify himself. She accuses him of always looking at her during battle. He is asked if he tried to peek under her skirt. He tries to explain, stating that he was only observing everyone's movements to act quickly when someone gets seriously injured. She expresses disbelief. The others watch the situation in silence. The young white mage, visibly dejected, listens to his companion's harsh words. One of them, with a stern look, points out that with his current level, he is incapable of providing adequate support against powerful monsters. His only healing ability can be used only once, making him a burden in battle. Moreover, when his magical power runs out, he becomes incapable of moving, worsening his uselessness in combat. Humiliated, the mage recognizes the truth amid the criticisms, admitting that his power is quickly depleted. While a faint feeling of compassion or hesitation arises in one of the companions, who begins to say something but is interrupted by the harsh reality of the moment. He declares that he has gathered information on dungeons for the group's benefit, analyzed enemies to find their weak points, and compensated for his deficiencies in other ways. He also cooks and does housework so that everyone can travel comfortably, doing all of this alone. She sighs. He observes that it seems he doesn't know how much people expect from the group. It is declared that this group will defeat the demon lord threatening the world, and even the king has high expectations for them. He ponders what would happen if their white mage is someone useless like him. He acknowledges his lack of power, but continues his thought. She says they won't have a future. He wonders why then he chose him. A scene shows him at age 11. In another scene, he asks why he was chosen when he was a slave. He concludes there must be a reason for him to have been chosen. He wonders why he was chosen, and then why. She considers him really stupid for not even knowing that. She sighs and thinks of his value and the desire to protect the place he belongs to. He reveals that there was no profound meaning in his choice, that it was simply because he wanted a cheap slave who was also a healer. He explains that he would have bought anyone, as long as they were cheap and a white mage. She reacts with disbelief. He mentions that when he bought him, he was still a poor E-ranked adventurer. She thinks she doesn't want someone useless like him again, and now that she thinks about it, anyone would do. He realizes that at this rate, he will truly be banned. She thinks that as one of them, they can choose any adventurer they want, and that this time, she will pick a suitable white mage. It is mentioned that there are only 3 A-ranked groups at the moment. He murmurs in understanding. She realizes that Loki doesn't want to waste a teleportation stone on him. He thinks Loki might have found a place to get rid of him. Moreover, considering he said that at that moment, it means he will be left behind on a deep floor below the Yggdrasil's labyrinth, where fierce monsters lurk. He protests, claiming he will die if they leave him behind. She repeatedly exclaims, "No." He pleads with Loki. She declares that she doesn't want to die. He repeats that he doesn't want to die and is afraid of dying. He asks for a chance to redeem himself and begs not to be left there. She considers giving him a chance. He reacts with surprise and pain. Another person orders him to heal that wound. He screams in pain. She encourages him to heal, or he will die. He screams in agony. Another character laughs hysterically, expressing pain and disbelief at Loki's cruelty. He thinks he's going to die and cannot breathe, choking. He groans and screams in pain while holding the weapon. He tries to pull the weapon out. Exhausted and gasping, he calls for healing. His wound is completely healed, leaving no visible scar. She observes that his healing speed is the only good thing about him. He gasps and murmurs. She expresses surprise at the healing. Even exhausted and wounded, the young white mage refuses to give up. Struggling against the pain and fatigue, he tries to get up, determined not to fall as he always did. In his mind, only one thought echoes: prove his worth. Panting, he rises slowly, surprising even one of his companions, who recognize the achievement as unusual, since he usually could barely move in such a state. She says she is just kidding. He chokes. She questions if he really thought they would take him. She states that the magical stone is too precious to be used on him, and that this is the perfect moment to get rid of him. He murmurs. She says goodbye to him. He thinks, so now. He laughs hysterically. She says it's good for him, Ray, because now he will be able to survive with that, which is the knife he gave her, and which she is returning. She comments that it would be scary to live there without weapons, right? He wonders if he will spend the rest of his life there. He curses the situation. She and another character laugh sadistically. He questions himself, lost in his own thoughts, trying to understand the reason for all the suffering. After enduring countless treatments and hardships, all he wanted was to protect his place by the group's side. Even in the face of disdain and humiliation, he stood firm, resisting. However, even with all the effort, he still wonders why he continues to be rejected. He reacts in shock upon seeing an A-ranked monster. He realizes he still can't move his body. From afar, laughter is heard. He seriously questions why he has to go through all this. He recalls that his family was killed by monsters and that he became a slave. He remembers that Loki bought him. She thinks that everyone took out their stress on her and that she suffered physical abuse. He reflects on his entire life, questioning the meaning of all this. He is thrown into the air. Falling, he groans. He thinks about how pathetic he is. Something explodes beneath him. He hears a voice that seems familiar. He realizes he can hear a voice. The voice calls to him, asking for a response. He reacts confused, questioning what is happening. She notices that he finally woke up. He looks at her, thinking she looks like nothing more than a girl. She hesitates. He reacts confused, questioning if she is a girl. She thinks, I want to say... He wonders why there is a girl in that place. She wonders if it could be that. He stammers an affirmative response, finding her cute. She reacts in surprise. She asks why he is looking at her. He laughs. She questions what he wants. She says he can compliment her more. She confidently declares that she is cute. He stammers in response. She reacts in surprise. He thinks he can say which floor they are on. She asks him to tell her something he knows. He hesitates to say why he is there. She asks what floor they are on first. He thinks that wasn't what he wanted to say. She questions why there is a girl like her in the dungeon. He asks for calm. They realize where they are. He reacts confused. It is informed that they are on the 200th floor, which is the lowest floor of the Yggdrasil's labyrinth. He repeats incredulously, lowest floor? He panics for not being able to get out of there. She asks if they are on the lowest floor of the Yggdrasil's labyrinth. She ponders. He states that he should be able to get out of there since they obtained the secret treasure. She reacts surprised and confused. He confirms that, of course, it's the secret treasure of Yggdrasil. She asks if they obtained it. He reacts confused. She asks if he can't feel the aura of Yggdrasil. It is stated that he has already been cursed by Yggdrasil. He reacts shocked, asking what she means by cursed, and asking her to wait a minute. She states that his rotting left eye is the proof of that. It is explained that his magic circuit is now connected to Yggdrasil, meaning he has obtained unlimited magical power. She says he should be able to get out of there if he uses it well, and that it's up to him how to use that secret treasure. She considers him lucky. He wonders who she is. He also questions the curse of Yggdrasil and the unlimited magical power. She asks, me? She reveals that her name is Norn. He repeats her name, thinking he has heard that name somewhere before. She notices he looks lost and suggests he try to remember. She watches him, questioning what's wrong. He hesitates. She evaluates him by his appearance, concluding that he is a white mage, and instructs him to use his heal magic. He reacts confused. She simply tells him to use it. He agrees hesitantly. She encourages him to try. He thinks he'll use all of his magical power if he casts a single heal and won't be able to move from exhaustion. He thinks that's why he was... Someone asks how he's feeling. He casts the heal spell. He reacts surprised. He realizes he doesn't feel tired. He thinks. She laughs quietly and comments that it's not just that. She says he can feel his body overflowing with magical power, right? He notices that his magical power isn't empty and wonders what's going on. It is explained that this is the magical power of Yggdrasil, and that, as said before, it is connected to his magic circuit. Normally, magical power flows from the core of the magic circuit, which is the gateway for magical power. However, when he was taken and arrived there, he received Yggdrasil's curse, and that transferred the core of his magical power from his left eye to Yggdrasil. It is stated that the magical power core cannot be easily repaired with heal. He reacts shocked to hear about the magical power of Yggdrasil. He ponders that as long as his magical power is provided by Yggdrasil, he will be able to use it many times. He expresses surprise at this possibility. He wonders why this is happening and what connected him to Yggdrasil. She says he can use the unlimited magical power as much as he wants, and confirms that it is true. She hesitates. He realizes something. She asks if he's curious about that. He agrees. She explains that, after all, this refers to his own body. She mentions something that shouldn't be mentioned. She says that the spring is related to why this happened to him, and asks him to follow her. He remembers that she said he was cursed. She explains that he drank from the spring's water when he was taken, and that's the reason. She also mentions that he was floating in that spring, and that she pulled him out. He agrees. She says that the spring water is one of Yggdrasil's secret treasures, also known as the Tears of the World Tree, and that it is said it can even resurrect the dead. The tree he was leaning against is now the world tree that forms that dungeon. It is the lowest floor, where no adventurer has ever reached, and the Yggdrasil treasure that every adventurer seeks. He realizes the information. He concludes that this is the world tree. He thinks about the unlimited magical power and the secret treasure of that dungeon. He wonders if that spring water was generated by the world tree, and realizes that he obtained that secret treasure. He is surprised by the power of the secret treasure of the SSS-ranked dungeon. She exclaims, amazed, that his garden is SSS-ranked, and asks if he's not joking. He reacts confused. He realizes that he has finally understood what is happening and is now curious about that girl, finding all of this incredible. She says she can tell which floor they are on, but not why she is there. She says, calling him by name, that there are no other humans in that dungeon except for him. He asks if she's alone there. She confirms that she has been surviving alone there the whole time. She agrees, saying she is stronger than she seems. He questions her eyes, expressing disbelief. She observes that he seems to be 12 years old and that the dungeon should have an age restriction. He admits having difficulty believing it, although he recognizes that age isn't necessarily related to strength. She insists that she can defeat S-ranked monsters instantly. He thinks that's unbelievable. She says that even his group had no chance against S-ranked monsters. She considers that he has already gotten his answer anyway. She asks if, leaving that aside, he wants to leave. He agrees. He thinks he wants to leave but needs to defeat S-ranked monsters to do so. He imagines not being able to leave there. He reflects that he is not a swordsman or a mage, just a white mage. He ponders that, even with unlimited magical power, he doesn't know what he should do from here on out, even if he could leave. She agrees. He thinks that now that he thinks about it, he's already been banned from the group. He realizes he has nothing left and nowhere to return to. He sighs and thinks, maybe he should just stay there since he has nothing left. He ponders that maybe spending the rest of his life in that dungeon and dying there is the happiest life he could have. She watches him thinking. He clenches his fist, thinking that then he won't be able to save anyone anymore. She comments, by the way. He asks if, by chance, he can live there. She reacts surprised, asking if he's going to live there. She hesitates in her affirmative response. She remembers him saying that he wanted to leave. She expresses disbelief at his question. He thinks maybe he'll stay there for a while. He decides to change his mind and expresses a desire to remain in that place. When questioning about food there, he receives a surprising answer. It's not necessary to eat. Yggdrasil provides all the magical nutrition the body needs, allowing him to survive without ingesting food. In this environment, even minor injuries heal quickly. putting him in a state very close to immortality. He asks if she is immortal. She answers that she is very close to immortality and that, if she were decapitated, everything would end for her. He asks what she means. She explains that, if he lives there, he will soon know all of those things. He ponders that he used the healing to get an idea of Yggdrasil's magical power, but she interrupts him, saying that his wounds were already almost healed before he used the healing. She says that whether he stays or leaves at that moment, he is monster food. She warns him that monsters may appear there, and that by the end of the day, he will need to be stronger to survive. She declares him weak. 3 years passed. On a deep floor of the dungeon, the protagonist is alone on floor 180, surrounded by sharp ice formations. He walks with determination until he suddenly stops. His eyes fix on something, and he clenches his fist. With a firm step, the ground begins to crack beneath his feet. The protagonist, with a focused look and sword in hand, leaps toward a huge creature. He delivers a powerful strike to the monster's head, sending it violently flying backward amid the debris. The monster counters with its tail, hitting the protagonist and throwing him to the ground with force. Even injured, he quickly reaches out to recover his sword, maintaining a focused and determined look. The hero leaps and launches several energy projectiles at the monster, causing multiple explosions. Even so, the creature holds its ground, roaring furiously while facing its enemy, preparing to counterattack. With a serious look, the protagonist apologizes before delivering a final blow. He jumps and drives his sword forcefully into the creature's head, piercing its thick skin. The attack is devastating, and the monster's body is torn in half by the blade, marking the hero's victory. The monster's body falls to the bottom, defeated. The protagonist, exhausted, observes his trembling hands and can hardly believe it. He walks until he stops and, emotional, celebrates aloud. After so much effort, he has finally defeated the creature. Rei is praised for his incredible evolution. The girl with light hair recognizes that he is unrecognizable compared to 3 years ago. She celebrates the defeat of the Dark Serpent, the boss of floor 180, and highlights how well he now masters his magical power. Rei explains that he used Yggdrasil magic to reinforce his body and the knife, releasing energy directly into the enemy during the attack. Rei remembers with embarrassment the early days of training when he was constantly defeated by a small monster. The girl mocks him, but he explains that that rabbit wasn't just any monster. It was an S-rank monster, the Ark Rabbit. He admits that, without the help of a special treasure, he would have died before even being able to train. Rei explains that he became stronger thanks to the unlimited use of healing with Yggdrasil's magical power, in addition to the semi-immortal body that allowed him to experiment without fear. He even managed to recover a lost eye by changing the magic circuit. His accuracy with magic also evolved, increasing his healing efficiency. The girl is surprised by his progress and admits that, even under her guidance, she didn't expect him to grow so much in just 3 years. She thought it would take a century. She calls him a monster with a smile. Rei sincerely thanks Norn, saying her teachings were incredible. They laugh together, but the lightness disappears suddenly. A mysterious figure appears before him, and, with a serious look, declares that he is still weak. Rei's expression changes immediately, filled with surprise and tension. Rei becomes thoughtful and disturbed after seeing the strange figure again. Norn notices his expression and asks if it was another illusion. He confirms and reveals that since he arrived in that place, he sometimes sees a younger version of himself. Rei comments that he always sees the child when he is near death. Norn explains that this could be a side effect of the connection with Yggdrasil, the tree of life, which accumulates all existences. She suggests that the thoughts of the dead may be mixing with his magic. Concerned, she warns him not to be consumed by it. Rei listens in silence and clenches his fist, taking the warning seriously. While training, Rei comments that 3 years have passed since they arrived there. Norn notices the nostalgic tone and asks if he's starting to miss the outside world. Jokingly, she says he has a cute side. Rei tries to hide it, laughing and denying with embarrassment. During the training, Rei mentions how quickly time has passed. Since meeting Norn, 3 years have already gone by. He remembers that at first, it felt like time had stopped, but now everything seems to fly by. Maybe it's because he spent every day fighting to survive her intense training. Now, stronger, he can easily defeat even S-ranked monsters, surpassing the members of the Gunkino Dongwa clan. Norn then announces it's his turn to attack. Ray charges at Norn during the training. He recalls the times when he almost died, but now feels that he has finally become strong enough to live in that place. Seeing an opening, he gets excited, thinking this is his chance to attack. During the training, Ray gets distracted for a moment and ends up taking a direct hit from Norn. She scolds him for taking his eyes off the fight. Lying on the ground, he gets up in pain while she asks what he was doing, visibly irritated by his lack of focus. Norn comments that she thought Ray had matured, but realized that he's still quite naive. She teases him about the situation, and he, embarrassed, thinks that any man would have looked away at that moment. After that, the two relax and look at the starry sky. Ray, now calmer, comments that the stars are more visible that night. Ray asks if Norn has always been alone there, and she responds that yes, since few humans can get so deep into the dungeon. He reflects on the absurd strength of the Shadow Viper, admitting that he died countless times before finally defeating it. Compared to the monsters from the outside world, it was on another level. Ray asks if Norn has never wanted to leave the dungeon. Surprised, he hears from her that she cannot leave, even though she's strong enough. She explains that if it were possible, she would have left a long time ago. Although she finds the place comfortable, it's not the main reason she's there. Ray stays silent, reflecting on the situation. Norn admits that, despite everything, she still wants to see the world outside the dungeon. She asks Ray if he doesn't have something he'd like to do out there. He hesitates, surprised by the question, and begins to reflect on it. If he still has something he wants to accomplish beyond that place. Ray remembers the past with his old group, but realizes that he never thought about reuniting with them. What remains inside him is hatred and frustration. He begins to question what he still has, and why he wanted to die back then. Norn, with a curious smile, asks if he doesn't have someone he'd like to find outside the dungeon. Ray stays silent, thoughtful, after Norn's question. Suddenly, a strong memory comes to his mind, a voice calling his name with joy. He freezes, surprised and shocked, as the memory makes him confront something he had buried a long time ago. After deep reflection, Ray suddenly stands up and calls out to Norn. With a determined look and a slight smile, he says that he's going to leave the dungeon. He realizes that he still has something to do out there, a purpose he can no longer ignore. Ray remembers a girl named Nenemoa, a young girl with red hair with a mark under her eye. Before joining the Gunkino Dongwa group, she was a slave like him, and the two spent a lot of time together in the slave trader's mansion. This memory seems to ignite an important feeling in Ray. Ray recalls his time as a slave and the constant presence of Nene, a girl of his age. He would call her that affectionately. Always together, she acted like an older sister, protecting him. When the slave traders took their anger out on them with violence, it was she who tried to bear it all, taking the pain in his place. Even when beaten, Nene always stepped in front to protect Ray. She faced the slave traders without hesitation, trying to push them away from him. When he cried and asked if she was okay, Nene always responded the same way, with a calm and protective look, as if she wanted to ease his pain. Nene, with a gentle and determined smile, promised to protect Ray. But she also asked, with tenderness, that if she were ever in danger, he would save her. Ray, at the time a hopeless slave, thought it was impossible to fulfill that promise. Still, those words stayed engraved in his memory. Ray remembers when he was a slave and how he was saved by Nene's unconditional love. Even though he couldn't reciprocate at the time, he felt his heart being touched by her kindness. Now, as an adventurer, he carries the pain of still not having fulfilled the promise he made, to save her, as she had asked. Ray finally understands. Now he has the power to fulfill the promise made to Nene. With the magical strength he has gained, he believes he can solve whatever is happening with her. He promises to reunite with her, and if she is in danger, he will save her. Determined, he knows he is no longer the weak boy he once was. 5 months have passed. Now, with Norn's help, Ray advances through the Yggdrasil labyrinth towards the exit. His goal is clear, to find Nenemoa. Determined and stronger than ever, he presses forward, ready to fulfill the promise he made in the past. Ray stops for a moment, feeling that this place seems familiar to him. Norn says they are on the 125th floor, not even halfway through. Although his body is fine thanks to Yggdrasil's magic, he feels the mental fatigue building. Norn reminds him that it will take at least 2 more years to reach the exit. 5 months have passed since they started climbing. During the journey to the exit, Ray has been responsible for nearly all the battles. Norn explained that this is part of the training, so she rarely helps him, even in difficult moments. Still, she promised to intervene if he is really in danger. Even so, Ray feels that it's not fair, especially when he realizes that she enjoys watching him fight alone. Ray complains that Norn only laughs instead of helping him in the fights. She remembers a moment on the 160th floor, laughing as she saw him covered in saliva. Norn explains that if she kept saving him all the time, the training would lose its purpose. She says she can laugh now because she knows he's gotten stronger. Ray, surprised by the sincerity behind her words, watches her in silence. While Ray washes his clothes covered in saliva, Norn doesn't miss the chance to tease him, saying it was hilarious, watching him desperately try to clean himself. Embarrassed, he tries to change the subject, but she keeps provoking him. Soon after, she finds a bag and suggests there may be clean clothes inside, saying he can't go out covered in saliva and blood. Ray, already confused by the smell, starts worrying about his appearance. Ray recognizes the bag Norn found. It was his. Surprised, he remembers thinking Loki had taken the item. Norn is impressed by the coincidence. Then Ray realizes that this was exactly the place he was in before falling, which explains why the location seems so familiar. Norn, visibly disappointed, rummages through Ray's backpack and complains that there is nothing useful there, not even a change of clothes. She accuses him of underestimating the Yggdrasil labyrinth. Not knowing what to say, Ray simply admits his mistake. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and he turns around, surprised, reacting to an unexpected sound. A monster suddenly appears in front of Ray and Norn. Upon seeing it, Ray immediately recognizes it and reacts surprised. Norn asks if he knows the creature, and Ray responds that it's not exactly that. They just met before. The monster, in turn, speaks directly to him, signaling that this reunion is not a coincidence. Ray charges full force into the attack, remembering his previous encounter with the monster. He recognizes that the creature may not understand his words, but still declares aloud, he is not the same as before. With a determined look and resolve on his face, he throws himself with full force, ready to prove his evolution. Ray attacks with force, but realizes the strike barely hurt the monster. The wound was superficial. He compares the creature to the Shadow Viper, concluding that, although this one is faster and more complicated, this new enemy has even greater resistance. But then he notices something important. The shell is what's resistant. The interior may be more vulnerable. The monster prepares for a devastating attack, filling its chest with air. Ray watches attentively and senses the imminent danger. The creature then releases a powerful blast of energy or poison, destroying everything around with brute force. The situation becomes critical quickly. The monster's attack explodes with brutal force, sending debris flying everywhere. Ray, now with his body covered in dark marks and his face in shadow, activates his power. He grips his weapon firmly, enveloped in magical energy, staring at the enemy with determination. The confrontation is about to reach its peak. After defeating the monster, Ray sighs with relief and asks Norn how he did. She watches him silently for a moment, then responds unexpectedly, asking him that when he leaves the dungeon to go make friends. It's a statement full of affection, showing that she cares about his future outside that place. Norn says that, even though she doesn't know how to explain it well, she wishes for Ray to make trustworthy friends. She calls him reckless and wants him to not be alone. Ray is confused by the sudden request, but agrees. Even though he's not very confident he will be able to, he promises to try. Norn encourages him with a smile and a thumbs up, and Ray, though thinking she's being too lighthearted, feels the genuine support behind her words. Norn speaks with affection and seriousness, saying that people cannot live alone. She reminds Ray that he still has a long life ahead of him, and asks him to make friends. Her wish is that, even if she's no longer around, he can keep smiling and having fun with other people. Ray listens to it all with a surprised look, deeply touched by her words. Ray panics when he hears Norn speak, as if she will disappear, and asks her not to say such things. He believes it will bring bad luck. After a moment of silence and reflection, he clenches his fist, looks at her firmly, and promises he will do his best. Even without being sure of what the future holds, he is determined to move forward with resolve. Norn smiles tenderly and praises Ray, saying, "Good boy." The atmosphere is light and warm. Ray responds with a calm smile, showing that, despite the difficulties and the uncertain future, this moment of affection and recognition meant a lot to him. Norn, laughing, teases Ray, saying he's still just a kid in her eyes. Even so excited, she calls him to continue the journey. Ray smiles faintly, thinking to himself that if he manages to make friends in the outside world, he will bring them to meet Norn. And more than that, he wants to introduce Nenemoa to her as well. With this feeling in his heart, he moves forward, promising to return after fulfilling his mission. Ray and Norn walk together through the vast and mysterious landscape, crossing rocky formations and forests. A bird flies freely across the sky, symbolizing the freedom awaiting beyond the labyrinth. Both seem determined as they continue advancing through the challenges of their journey. The promise of reunions and new bonds guides their steps towards the outside world. Along the way, Norn unexpectedly trips, surprising even Ray. Later, the two set up camp, share a scare together, and face another bizarre situation. In the end, despite the difficulties and unexpected events, the two burst out laughing, showing that, above all, their bond has only grown stronger. Ray and Norn finally arrive at the exit of the labyrinth. The intense light marks the end of their long journey. After years of facing dangers, challenges, and growth, they are now about to cross the line that separates them from the outside world. Ray looks at the exit of the labyrinth with relief and admiration, finally realizing they've reached the end of the journey. Norn confirms that her work ends there and wishes him safety, even acknowledging that he has an immortal body. When Ray calls her, it seems she wants to say something important before parting. Ray, with eyes full of emotion, asks if Norn can't go with him. But Norn reveals the truth. Her real body died a long time ago, and what is there now is just a form created by the aura of the dungeon. As a white mage, Ray should have noticed this. Norn explains that her body is made entirely of magical power, and if she left the dungeon, she would completely dissipate. That's why here, their paths must part. Ray apologizes, feeling guilty for making her say something so harsh, but Norn responds lightly, trying to keep the mood lighter, even with the impending farewell. Norn asks Ray to visit her from time to time, saying she would feel lonely if he didn't come back. Ray, surprised at first, smiles and promises that he won't let her feel alone. He says that he likes this place and will definitely return. Ray promises that if he manages to make friends outside, he will introduce them to Norn. She smiles and says she's looking forward to it, even commenting that he can even bring a girlfriend if he wants. A little embarrassed, Ray confirms the commitment. Norn encourages him to have fun too, even if his main goal is to reunite with a friend. Finally, Ray says he's leaving and bids farewell with a smile. "I'll see you later, Norn." Norn smiles and wishes Ray to be careful. He waves his hand, crossing the exit. As he walks, a narration begins. He lived on the deepest floor of that place for 3 years. Ray keeps walking while reflecting. It has been 5 years since he last saw the outside world, 3 years living at the bottom, and 2 climbing to the exit. He wonders if the world has changed, or if everything is still the same. Thinking about it makes him anxious, but also excited. With a mix of fear and anticipation, he says firmly, he's going to the outside. Ray finally exits the labyrinth. He runs to the edge and is emotional as he sees the outside world after so long. Tears stream down as he looks at the real sky, feeling his body respond with enthusiasm. After 5 years of being trapped, he is back on the surface. Ray watches the portal behind him begin to disappear. He understands that if he wants to return to the labyrinth someday, he will have to enter again through the original entrance. The exit closes completely, marking the end of an important cycle in his journey. Ray gathers himself after leaving the labyrinth, determined to move forward. He thinks about going to a village or town to trade some items for money and buy new clothes. But something interrupts him, a strange smell in the air. He wonders if it's his own, but soon realizes it's not. That smell, it's something familiar, something he recognizes, and it clearly puts him on high alert. Ray confirms his suspicion. The smell is blood and monsters. He comes across a brutal scene. People have been attacked and killed by a mysterious figure in a cloak. The attacker justifies the massacre by saying that he's only following orders from superiors. The situation shows that the world outside the labyrinth is far from peaceful. The threat reveals itself fully. An imposing creature, with dragon-like features and a monstrous presence, declares that it has been ordered to devour many humans. Behind it, shadowy figures with multiple heads follow, suggesting that it's not alone, and a greater force is behind these brutal attacks. The dragon reveals that its mission came directly from one of the four mortal demons, leaders who answered to the Demon King himself. The order was clear: destroy the capital. A demon army gathers, thirsty for blood, blindly obeying their master's words. The invasion is already underway, and the capital is about to be engulfed by war. The demons are on a brutal campaign, attacking travelers and merchants without stop, looting and killing everyone in their path. After each attack, they devour the humans, but still find it insufficient. They want to prove their superiority by exterminating even more. The goal is clear: gather enough resources to invade and destroy the capital. The demon watches a cart approaching and gets excited at the chance for another massacre. Thirsty for blood, it declares that it will loot, kill, and devour the humans. To it, all of this is just cruel fun. The knight observes the massacred bodies around, realizing that the demonic creatures have already devoured several people. Breathless and angry, he faces the enemy and recognizes this is, without a doubt, the one responsible for the slaughter. The knight immediately recognizes who he's facing: a single brown horn, a huge battle axe. No doubt, it's Vegan, the B-ranked human hunter. With arrogance, Vegan confirms his identity, saying it seems he has become quite famous. Vegan searches through the remains of the destroyed caravan and praises the quality of the items, saying everything has high magic and comes from the Drake Slave Company. Suddenly, he attacks violently, launching a magical strike at a woman, who screams in despair as she's dragged by the brutal force of the strike. The woman, fallen and panicked, tries to move away while Vegan watches her with a cruel look, evaluating her quality as if she were just another item among the looted goods. Even frightened, she tries to react, but Vegan approaches with dark intent, hinting at something even worse. Vegan realizes that the two survivors are not slaves, but holy knights, which surprises him. He comments that it's natural to have guards after so many ambushes he has committed. When one of the knights seems to try to retreat, Vegan taunts him, questioning if he's really going to flee. The knight panics, realizing he has no chance against Vegan, a monster capable of splitting armor in half with a single blow. Even though he's part of an elite unit recognized by the king, he decides to flee to report to his superiors. However, Vegan taunts him, asking if he really wants to turn his back on him. The knight who tried to flee is killed with a single blow. Vegan watches the fallen body and mocks, saying that the holy knights are just decorations. To him, that opponent wasn't even strong, which makes everything more boring. He then comments with contempt, as if looking for someone more worthy to face. The girl is desperate and trembling in front of Vegan. He approaches slowly, disregarding the dead knight's body. He says that men have bad taste, so he'll let the demonic beasts have him. The atmosphere grows increasingly tense as the threat against her closes in. The monster grabs the girl tightly and moves closer to her face, saying that she looks delicious. He praises her face and eyes, stating that he will turn her into his pet before devouring her. The girl cries out for help in desperation, while he observes the fear in her eyes with satisfaction, thinking that her expression is very good. The monster watches the girl with a sadistic look, finding it all amusing. He comments that humans do anything when they fear death. While recalling other victims, he says that they all begged for their lives and promised to do anything. To him, humans are very interesting creatures precisely because of this desperation. The monster continues his cruel speech, saying that the face humans make when betrayed and fall into despair is the most fun to watch. He holds the girl tightly, savoring the fear in her eyes, while the atmosphere becomes even heavier and more threatening. The monster takes pure pleasure in the girl's suffering, laughing as he claims he'll take care of her until her plea changes from "please spare me" to "please kill me." He is clearly enjoying her desperation, showing how cruel and sadistic he is. The protagonist unexpectedly appears and breaks the tense atmosphere with a simple "good afternoon." Both the monster and the girl, taken by surprise, are in shock. The girl, still immobilized, reacts with confusion, while the monster clearly wasn't expecting anyone's arrival. The protagonist pretends to be lost and apologizes for interrupting. He acts naturally and even asks if he can take the girl as a guide to a village. This catches the monster off guard, who begins to wonder who this guy is and how he got so close without being noticed. The tension shifts quickly, and the villain realizes there's something wrong with this person. The girl, desperate, shouts at the protagonist to run immediately, thinking that the enemy's target is her. But the monster notices something strange. The protagonist's body is covered in monster blood, and even with his clothes torn, he doesn't emit any scent of fear. This makes the villain suspicious and intrigued, wondering who exactly this man is. Meanwhile, the protagonist stays calm, showing no intention to flee. The monster observes the protagonist with distrust, finding the huge amount of monster blood on his body strange. Still, he decides that he can't leave any witnesses alive. The protagonist remains calm, giving off a distant impression. The monster then concludes he has a good idea. Something dark is coming. The villain devises a cruel plan. He will let the protagonist try to flee, only to cut him from behind and rip off his legs without killing him. Then, he intends to torture him in front of the girl, wanting to see her expression of despair as she witnesses it all. He gets excited just imagining the scene. The villain proposes a cruel game. The protagonist can leave, but the girl must stay. The protagonist calmly accepts, which surprises everyone, including the villain, who expected to see desperation on his face. The protagonist says, "Okay," but then adds, "in exchange," as he prepares to act. The villain gets distracted while thinking about how he'll enjoy the girl's suffering. But at that moment, the protagonist quickly advances behind him with a precise strike. The girl tries to warn him, but it's too late. The villain only realizes when he's already being struck. The protagonist lands a brutal kick directly to the villain's face, throwing him forcefully away. The impact is so strong that the monster's body twists in the air. The girl watches everything with wide eyes, shocked by what just happened. The protagonist's kick sent the enemy flying into the forest with such force that he destroyed several trees upon impact. Even injured, the villain still tries to get up but stumbles. The girl watches in fear, barely believing what she just saw, and whispers in shock how cruel that was. The villain, still injured, becomes excited by the girl's reaction. He shows perverse pleasure in seeing the suffering of others and approaches the fallen protagonist again, eager to see his expression of pain. The villain approaches the unconscious protagonist, ready to see his expression of agony. But when he turns the boy's face, he is met with a cold, threatening smile, completely surprising him. The villain, not understanding what happened, realizes in shock that he was cut without even noticing. The protagonist is now awake, wearing magical armor, and coldly states that he made a clean cut, making it clear that the fight has completely turned. The villain is in shock upon realizing that the protagonist, even after having his legs cut off, is whole. The hero's response is direct and sinister. He cut off his own head and reconnected it using healing magic. This shows the absurd level of mastery he has over his own body and abilities. The villain panics. He has never heard of such an absurd healing magic and begins to believe he's being deceived by some illusion. But one thing he knows for sure: the protagonist is far too dangerous. His only certainty now is that he needs to escape immediately, or he'll die. The lizard tries to flee, but his body doesn't respond. Even knowing that the protagonist is dangerous, he freezes in fear. Memories of what he heard from the most powerful demons echo in his mind. The weak must be discarded. If he runs now, he may be killed by them later. He's trapped between the fear of the enemy in front of him and the terror of the allies behind him. Vegan, overcome by despair, charges forward screaming that he needs to kill the boy. He tries to convince himself that he can't lose, that he's a high-level human hunter. But his attack is rushed, driven more by fear than confidence. Vegan tries to reaffirm his superiority as he attacks, shouting that he destroyed 3 human villages and killed several holy knights from the capital. He declares himself a high-ranking demon, trying to convince himself that he can't be defeated by a mere boy. But the cold look of his opponent shows that he is not intimidated at all. The boy finishes the attack with a brutal kick, throwing Vegan to the ground. As the enemy bleeds and can barely move, he approaches calmly and states, "Now you understand? You're weaker than me." Vegan's look reveals pure shock. His arrogance was crushed in just a few seconds. Vegan, all bloodied and in shock, retreats with his body trembling. He admits he was wrong. The boy looks at him from a distance, wiping the blood from his face, and coldly says that he'll forgive him just this once, but there won't be a second chance. Vegan, completely dominated by fear, admits he was wrong. He thought he was the predator, but he was actually the prey. Meanwhile, the boy keeps a cold look and warns him, If Vegan shows up again, he'll kill him without hesitation. After the battle, the boy approaches the girl and asks if she's okay. Still shaken, she thanks him for saving her and timidly introduces herself as Liaja, also revealing that she is a slave. Liaja is shocked to see that the boy's legs are fully healed, even knowing they had been cut off. He tries to change the subject but ends up revealing that he is a white mage, a healer. She's even more impressed to realize that he managed to heal so quickly with healing magic. The boy realizes that his healing magic is extraordinary, but only now does he realize it, as he's been doing this sort of thing every day for 5 years. Trying to change the subject, he asks Liaja what she plans to do now. She hesitates and answers that she still doesn't know. The boy watches Liaja, and as he looks at her, he is filled with memories from the past. She makes him remember an important person, someone who was always by his side when he was weak and incapable of doing anything. This memory brings out a feeling of nostalgia and maybe an old emotional debt. The boy hesitates upon seeing Liaja without direction. He thinks he can't just leave a 12-year-old girl alone, with no destination. The memory of a woman named Nenemoa comes to his mind, someone who surely would have helped in this situation without thinking twice. This memory reinforces his decision to act. The boy says that he is also without direction and thinking of going to the capital. He extends his hand to Liaja and invites her to go with him. He says that maybe there, she can find something good, since there are many things in the capital. She's surprised, remembers Nenemoa when she hears this. Liaja stares at the boy in surprise, while he smiles and says he wants to become someone like her, someone who helps others. He believes that now he might be able to achieve this, and that's why he asks, "How about it?" The scene suggests that he's offering more than just companionship. He's proposing a path together. The scene shifts to a technological and strange location, filled with tubes and equipment. A hooded figure walks toward a lab, where a creature is trapped and groaning. Someone nervously watches from the background. The narrator says, "It will be a while before I see you again." This suggests something important is being secretly prepared. The previous experiment failed. The creature that was screaming is dead. The villain comments that he still has many materials and doesn't mind the failure. Soon after, he reveals his next guinea pig, Nenemoa, who appears with a collar and a determined expression. He says, "It's your turn, Nenemoa," suggesting that something terrible is about to happen to her. The protagonist extends his hand to Liana, inviting her with a warm smile. "Liana-san, would you like to come with me to the royal capital? What do you say?" Liana, surprised and wide-eyed, can't hide the shock from the sudden invitation. The protagonist looks at two swords stuck in the ground as a silent sign of respect. After a moment of reflection, he brings his hands together in a gesture of farewell and prepares to move forward. Determined, he decides to travel as far as he can before night falls. The boy changes out of his torn clothes into a new outfit found in the destroyed wagon, feeling a bit guilty but resolved. To make up for it, he leaves behind a rare crystal he found in the dungeon. Just as he's about to leave, someone calls out to him, seemingly with something important to say. The girl declines the invitation to go with him, her gaze firm. She reveals that she's afraid of putting him in danger, since the demon vegan might return if they are together. The boy is surprised to hear the enemy's name again, and shows concern over her decision. The boy explains that, although he didn't kill the demon vegan, he managed to instill such intense fear in him that it prevented the demon from attacking again. He says that even if vegan reappears, he could defeat him easily. Then he reassures the girl, saying she no longer has to live as a slave and can live a normal life from now on. The girl reveals that even though her former temporary master is dead, she's still bound by the magical mark on her hand, proof of slavery. That seal is a curse that prevents a slave from disobeying orders, sustained by the master's magic. As long as that mark exists, she will remain a slave. The protagonist realizes he hadn't considered the consequences of her situation. Since she still has the slave mark but no owner, no one would buy her. The risk of being held responsible for her actions is too great. Masterless slaves end up rejected by society, doomed to become food for monsters, victims of abuse, or even take their own lives. The protagonist remembers how, even in danger, the girl put his safety first. He now understands she refused to go with him not out of unwillingness, but because she was afraid her presence would put him at risk. That makes him think of someone from his past, wondering how she would have acted in a situation like this. He recalls the bravery of a woman from the past. imagining she would never hesitate to help others. Thinking about this, he realizes the best thing he can do now is allow Liana to use her strength to protect and save others, even if that means letting her follow her own path. After reflecting on everything, he decides to give Liana a new chance. With a confident smile, he extends his hand and asks if she would accept forming a contract with him, not as master and slave, but as equals. Even knowing the risks, he acts firmly. Liana hesitates, remembering that her former master is already dead and that the official ritual can't be performed. Still, he reassures her. Without hesitation, he reaches out his hand and performs a magical act that begins to glow, touching the mark on her skin. The boy reveals that he also carries the mark of slavery, but he hides it with medicine because he hates seeing it. Liana is surprised to realize that he was also once a slave. Nevertheless, he tells her not to worry, stating that he was abandoned. A monster suddenly appears and attacks. The boy reacts quickly, positioning himself in front of Liana to protect her, blocking the blow. Both remain alert as the creature approaches. Several monsters approach, threatening. The boy realizes they are the same ones brought by Vegan and is surprised by how many are still alive. He positions Liana behind him, ready to protect her from the attack. The boy concentrates all his magical energy in his leg, waiting for the right moment. When the monsters charge, he releases everything at once, causing an explosion that violently throws them away. The boy faces the approaching monsters, with the debris from the explosion surrounding him. Determined, he positions himself in front of the girl and declares that he won't let any of them pass. The boy charges with speed at the monsters, showing surprising strength. The girl watches in silence, realizing that he is much more than just an ordinary healer. Faced with the number of monsters, the boy decides to use the same technique he used against Vegan. He concentrates his power and tries to impose fear directly on the creatures, making one of them retreat with a terrified scream. As the boy prepares to face more enemies, Liana takes the lead and defeats one of the monsters with a precise strike. He watches, surprised. Shortly after, she, still panting, celebrates quietly for managing to do it. Liana decides to fight alongside him, picking up a sword and facing the enemies. The boy reacts surprised by her decision, but she reassures him, revealing that she was trained in weapon use, although this is her first real battle. Even nervous, she is determined to help. The boy is surprised to find out that Liana received combat training. She explains that nowadays, slaves are not just used for heavy labor, but also trained to fight. He thinks about how much the world must have changed in the last 5 years. Despite this, Liana shows uncertainty as she faces the approaching monsters, feeling the pressure of the situation. The boy protects Liana from a surprise attack and realizes that the fight is too intense for her. He decides to use his aura to intimidate the monsters. With a serious look, he concentrates his energy, believing that the enemies must be able to feel his presence and understand they shouldn't advance. The boy's aura manifests in a monstrous way, completely frightening the wolves, who immediately retreat. The danger seems to have passed. He sighs with relief and says that everything is fine now, while Liana watches, more at ease. Liana apologizes, embarrassed, and thanks him for saving her. She says she's okay, even though she's clearly shaken. The boy realizes that she tried to fight without caring for her own life, thinking she was being a burden. He observes everything in silence, reflecting on her attitude. Liana tries to bring up the contract again, but the boy thinks quickly and invents an excuse. He says he lost his memory of the past few years. The revelation surprises Liana, but she reacts with interest and curiosity, not suspecting the intent behind his words. The boy reveals in thought that he lied about losing his memory. He believes telling the truth, that he spent years trapped in a dungeon, would only confuse Liana. So he pretends to be unaware of what happened recently, and asks her to teach him about the current world. The boy thinks he needs to understand what happened in the last 5 years in order to find Nenemoa. To do that, he proposes to the girl that she share her knowledge with him. In exchange, he promises to protect her, and even pay her for it. She is surprised, not understanding why he would make such an effort for her. The boy responds with a sincere smile, saying that he simply needs her, without complications or second intentions. The girl, surprised and moved by his straightforward words, is left speechless for a moment, asking if he really needs her. The girl accepts the proposal with a small smile, acknowledging that she would have died if he hadn't helped her. She then sincerely thanks him, He, excited by the response, says that he is now determined. They exchange thanks as they move forward, now as companions. The contract between them is successfully sealed. She thanks him enthusiastically and shows herself completely willing to obey him, calling him Rei-sama. He, on the other hand, panics at the excess formality and the way she treats him, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The protagonist explains that he didn't make the contract to become her master. In fact, he sees two practical advantages in this bond. The first is that they can always know each other's location, which makes it easier to rescue her if she's in danger. The second is that they can share and control magical energy, allowing him to strengthen her body with his aura to increase her chances of survival. Rei and Liana shake hands, marking the beginning of their partnership. She asks to be called just Liana, while he suggests she calls him Rei. Despite this, she calls him Rei-sama, with formality which makes him a little embarrassed. Even so, both show willingness to work together from now on. Rei decides it's better to set up camp before it gets dark since Liana is tired. Even though she insists she can still walk, she eventually gives in. As they prepare, Liana apologizes for having to stop there, saying she heard that the night monsters in the area are terrifying. Rei gets worried but doesn't fully show it. Rei tries to reassure Liana, saying that he's also tired and suggests they rest together in the tent he got from the wagon. She agrees, a bit embarrassed. As the fire crackles, Rei reflects on how surprised he was to see that some slaves are trained to fight, do tasks, and even take care of shops. While they talk by the campfire, Liana reveals that they are in the central region of the Serval territory, south of the capital. This shocks Rei, who freezes when he hears the name of the place. Discovering the real location seems to stir something important inside him, clearly showing that there's more to this territory than meets the eye. Rei realizes that he exited the Yggdrasil dungeon from a completely opposite side to the entrance, crossing through the territory of the royal capital. This shows how vast the dungeon is, much larger than he imagined. While processing this information, Liana surprises Rei by complimenting his strength. Liana tells him that, during her training, she got to watch a high-ranking Holy Knights fight in the capital. Although she admired their strength, she confesses that she found them much weaker than Rei, with less refined movements. This surprises Rei. Liana concludes by saying that, in her opinion, even the high-ranking knights wouldn't be able to keep up with Rei's movements. She says this based on what she saw during the recent battles, emphasizing just how impressive he is. Rei is visibly surprised by the compliment. Liana praises Rei, saying he is amazing. Rei gets a little embarrassed, but thanks her for the compliment, saying he's happy to hear that as a bodyguard. Liana, realizing what she said, panics and tries to apologize for daring to compliment him, thinking she was too forward. During the night, a strange sound coming from the forest puts both Liana and Rei on alert. They both observe attentively, trying to understand what's approaching. Liana shows concern, asking if it's another monster. Rei, with a serious expression, holds her hand and prepares to act if necessary. Rei asks Liana to stay where she is, stating that the sound from the forest must be from a creature even stronger than the one he faced before. Determined, he walks alone toward the danger, while Liana, surprised, tries to stop him from leaving, calling out to him worriedly. A new character appears, facing something ahead with seriousness. He says that they have finally reached their destination. A powerful group arrives in front of the entrance to an A-rank dungeon called the Door of Death's Dreams. The leader confirms that everyone is ready and reminds them that they are now a rank S team, thanks to the new member Kanata, the white mage. They proceed confidently, believing they have nothing to fear. The group's leader stares seriously at the challenge ahead. Confidently, he signals, "Let's begin the conquest." All team members prepare, ready to face the Door of Death's Dreams dungeon. The scene shifts a few months back in time. Highlighted is the imposing Valand Castle, located in the royal capital. Inside the castle, there's a huge painting of a majestic creature, a sacred deer with antlers radiating power. A solitary figure watches the image in silence. The main character in the scene reflects on the time that has passed since his last visit, about 5 to 6 years. It was at that time that the group he leads, Gunkino Dongwa, was promoted to A class. The image shows his team members, suggesting a strong connection and a past of shared achievements. The character walks through the castle and reflects on the past. He remembers that only a few are allowed to enter there, mainly the royal family, and those who aren't only enter when awarded. As he walks through that place, Old memories resurface, and he thinks something impactful. God is human. This gives the location an air of mystery and reverence, as if it holds grand secrets tied to divinity and power. The king, sitting on his throne, declares with authority that the gods cannot allow demons to profane the land where they live. He considers himself a god, and because of this, he believes his actions are just. He then orders, "Kill the Demon King." Thus, he sends the hero on a direct mission to eliminate the Demon King in the name of divine justice. On that day, the Gunkino Dongwa group was called to the throne. The king announces the next name, Loki Vidrador. The group is recognized for conquering A-ranked dungeons and contributing to the kingdom's development. As a reward, the king hands them the official certificate that promotes them to rank S adventurers. This time, 4 groups were promoted, including the narrator's group. However, only his group was elevated to rank S. While observing the other adventurers clearly annoyed, he smiles contentedly, enjoying the envious looks. Loki and the other adventurers thank the king and promise to continue striving. The king dismisses them after saying he is looking forward to their achievements and reinforces their mission to serve as a base to eliminate the Demon King. Everyone responds firmly. Yes, sir. Loki finally reaches the long-awaited rank S. He remembers the long journey. First, they conquered 8 C-ranked dungeons and 5 missions, then 4 B-ranked dungeons and 5 more missions, and finally 2 A-ranked dungeons with 3 missions. Now, in addition to greater rewards from the Adventurers Guild, he will also receive financial aid from the kingdom, bidding farewell to financial struggles. Loki is surprised by acquaintances congratulating him. He has become a rank S adventurer at only 20 years old. They recognize that this is something extraordinary, as most groups are still struggling to conquer A-ranked dungeons. He thanks them politely, while a slight, confident smile escapes. He knows how grand this achievement is. Loki lets himself be carried away by the euphoria. His smile reveals that the recognition and praise were exactly what he wanted. He thinks, this is it. This is the feeling. Finally, everyone looks at him with respect. Meanwhile, others comment on how this is the best part of being an adventurer, reaching the top and being admired by everyone. Loki pretends humility in front of others, saying that everything was thanks to the talent of his teammates. But inside, his thoughts are arrogant. He believes everyone is useless without his leadership. Even though he thanks them politely, deep down he feels that it's he who should be thanked. His thirst for approval completely takes over him. The knight praises Loki, saying that his group could even keep up with the heroes' group or defeat powerful enemies like the Demon King's generals, or even the terror of the dead. Loki responds with a forced smile, saying that he will do his best to defeat them, but inside, he is clearly pressured by the expectations. Loki bids farewell, saying that his group is waiting for him at the gate, but internally he shows disdain. He finds the old knight irritating and too dreamy for suggesting that he could defeat the terror of the dead. The page ends by explaining the monster. It is ranked A+, covered in poison, and only dies if its core is destroyed. There are 3 types: human, animal, and liquid. Loki continues to reflect on how dangerous the undead terrors are. He admits that his group would be destroyed in 5 seconds against the liquid type. Even the human type, the weakest, would probably not be defeated even by 10 elite holy knights. Each version of the creature is considered a disaster class entity. In the end, he concludes that even the hero wouldn't be able to defeat them alone. Loki smiles with disdain as he thinks that the undead terrors are high-level monsters that only appear in SSS-ranked dungeons like Yggdrasil. He believes that he will never encounter one of them in a million years. Inside the A-ranked dungeon, Dream Door of Death, a gigantic and fierce monster appears out of nowhere. Loki panics upon seeing the creature attack and screams his companion's name. Himeno! Himeno and another warrior charge together at the monster, coordinating a combined attack. They shout, "Okay," just as planned, and Himeno activates a skill called Suglinst, delivering a direct blow to the enemy as planned. The warrior praises Himeno for the precise attack, saying it was spot on. He then prepares to deliver a powerful blow to the monster's vulnerable point, taking advantage of the opening she created. The protagonist shouts angrily, calling the warrior an idiot upon realizing he charged recklessly. Then, the promising attack goes wrong. The warrior is caught off guard by an unexpected counterattack from the monster, which reacts quickly, leaving everyone in shock. The monster attacks violently, but a magical barrier is raised in time, protecting the warrior. Then, two mages from the group position themselves seriously, activating their magical circles to launch a powerful counterattack. Loki praises File for her good work with the magical barrier and moves forward determined. He says he will kill the monster using that protection as an advantage. The enemy is contained, and now is the time for the final attack. Loki gets irritated with Suglenst for attacking the monster carelessly. He reinforces that he already explained before that these monsters need to have their heads destroyed to die properly. Still, Suglenst arrogantly responds, saying he defeated the monster so it's fine, and complains that Loki talks too much. Kanata apologizes for not having finished yet, saying she needs more time. Suglenst pressures her, but Loki is already tired of dealing with him. He thinks it's not worth insisting on plans if Suglenst doesn't follow anything, and decides they will continue only after Kanata's arm is healed. Loki is visibly frustrated but prefers to save energy than argue with someone who doesn't listen. 3 years ago, miners opened the entrance to the A-rank dungeon called Dream Door of Death. 50 of them entered searching for treasures and rare ores, but none returned alive. The group entered the dungeon with 2 objectives: to investigate the disappearance of the miners and to conquer the dungeon. During the exploration, File is seen paying attention to something on the floor, which catches Loki's attention. File mentions Snowdrop, and Loki asks if he is referring to the flowers he found there. File explains that the flower found has 2 characteristics. It usually grows in snowfields, and can also bloom in places with strong magical power. This confirms that there is a powerful monster hidden in the dungeon. Himeno, sensing the same presence, says that her Blessing of the Sword Saint is reacting strongly. Loki explains that Himeno's Blessing of the Sword Saint is a powerful ability that drastically enhances the user's senses, reflexes, and physical abilities for a while. Additionally, this blessing alerts the bearer when there is a stronger enemy nearby. Given this, the group begins to doubt whether the dungeon is truly rank A, as the detected presence seems to be above this level, which would make things even more dangerous. Kanata shows concern, and someone questions what they should do next. Loki decides to continue the exploration, despite the warnings about a monster stronger than rank A. He confidently states that they have already conquered many dungeons and defeated several A-rank monsters, so he believes they will be fine. Suglenst, with a provocative tone, asks if the leader is sure about this. Loki gets irritated, finding the way he talks very annoying. While Loki praises Kanata for being a talented white mage, she humbly says that she's only ranked 20th and doesn't compare to number 1, Rei-sama. This catches Loki's attention, and he reacts surprised upon hearing the name Rei, remembering an old teammate, Raiden Huel, who was lost in Yggdrasil. The revelation surprises everyone, and Loki seems impacted upon realizing that Kanata knows this person. Loki is shocked to discover that the person he considered useless is actually the number 1 white mage in the ranking. He questions the existence of rankings and doesn't believe that guy could have gotten so high. Meanwhile, Kanata reveals that she has always admired Rei-sama's combat style. She explains that Rei was able to instantly analyze situations, read the enemy's data, and find the best solution, all without using much heal, yet still keeping the group alive. While Kanata tries to explain that Rei didn't use much heal for strategic reasons, one of the group members interrupts, laughing, and insults Rei, saying that he only didn't heal because he couldn't. He was too weak for it. Loki doesn't rebut. He just thinks it's convenient that someone said out loud what he himself wanted to say. Kanata, visibly bothered, only responds briefly, and Fal observes silently, noticing the heavy atmosphere that has formed. Kanata continues praising Rei, saying that he always looked for ways to protect the group without relying on magic. She calls him the greatest white mage, unique in his style, and speaks with genuine admiration. This deeply bothers Loki, who begins to get irritated and wonders why she is praising someone he despises. He clenches his fist in anger, trying to hide the jealousy and frustration he feels seeing Rei being so recognized. Kanata keeps praising Rei, now talking about the absurd speed and quality of the healing he performed. She explains that his heal didn't just accelerate recovery, but also directly regenerated damaged tissues, something beyond the capabilities of regular white mages. He could even reattach severed limbs instantly. Meanwhile, Loki watches, shocked and increasingly annoyed, starting to realize that Ray's level is far beyond what he imagined. The group finally begins to face reality. Without Ray, they probably would have never reached rank A, much less rank S. Each reflects in silence, realizing that perhaps their rise was just luck while they were under his care. Loki, shaken, imagines that they might even be dead now if Ray hadn't been with them in the past. The truth sinks in. Now, everyone begins to understand how absurd Ray truly was. They remember moments when he used healing magic with precision while serving as bait, something that, according to other white mages, would require an absurd concentration and was practically impossible. Compared to them, he healed broken bones in just 1 hour and still found it slow. Slowly, it becomes clear that Ray was far beyond the normal. Himeno explains that a white mage's ability depends on how well they understand the human body. If they don't know the origin of the wound, they can make things worse. This makes the others realize that the past white mages weren't bad. It was Ray who was a monster of another level. Frustration takes over everyone, especially Himeno, who becomes upset because Ray never told anyone how absurd he truly was. Himeno notices something approaching and tells everyone to hide. Loki quickly understands that it's a powerful monster, and Himeno confirms it's the Dungeon Master. She feels the intense presence and says that only one enemy is coming, but it is extremely strong. Himeno feels extreme danger. The monster approaching isn't just rank A, it could be rank S. Her blessing is screaming at her to run. Loki and the others are shocked. A final floor boss here? They wonder what to do, and Loki tries to calm down, reminding everyone that they didn't reach rank S by luck. Still, panic begins to take over as they realize this monster is on the same level as those from Yggdrasil. Loki assumes leadership and motivates everyone. He believes the group is stronger and can win. Despite the fear, the group members agree to fight. Kanata hesitates, but decides to give her best. The rest of the team follows resolutely, even if reluctantly. Loki finishes with a confident shout, "Let's do this!" And the group prepares to face the unknown monster. The group finally faces the monster. The creature has a humanoid appearance, but with bizarre and deformed details, along with a dark aura that distorts the environment around it. Everyone is paralyzed, staring at it in shock and fear. Loki, shocked, can only murmur, "This is..." The entire team feels the pressure of the real threat in front of them. File remembers the significant moment from 2 years ago when she stood in front of the most difficult dungeon of all, the Yggdrasil Labyrinth, ranked SSS. At that time, she was by Ray's side in one of the most dangerous challenges they ever faced. During a quiet moment from the past, Ray gives File a birthday present, a butterfly-shaped hairpin. He says it would suit her, and takes the opportunity to thank her for everything, revealing that he had wanted to do this for some time. File, surprised, reacts emotionally. File says she never did anything to deserve a thank you, but Ray insists, reminding her of all the times she helped him in battles and everyday tasks. He asks her to accept the gift. File then thanks him and promises to cherish the present, while Ray smiles. However, silently, he thinks she's wrong. He considers himself weak and believes he only helped her up to a certain point. Fale always knew that Ray was the one who truly held the group together. Even after warning Loki several times, she was never taken seriously. To File, Ray was the real pillar of the team, the one who worked the hardest and kept everything functioning. Still, some only saw him as weak support, useful only for gathering information or serving as bait. They said he was the weakest white mage, unable to even use a single healing spell, and because of that, he was the one who had to work the hardest. While some emphasized that Ray needed to push himself to the max to compensate for his weakness, others simply underestimated him, saying he would only have value if he killed himself working. File tried to warn the group, but realized her words had no weight. Tired of being ignored, she gave up on speaking, until she encountered someone unexpected. File is startled when a blonde girl approaches her, saying she has seen her there before. The girl comments that she has been to that spot many times and asks if File is trying to conquer the dungeon. Confused and surprised by the sudden approach, File can only ask, "Who are you?" The blonde girl introduces herself eccentrically, saying she's a beautiful girl who treats the dungeon as her garden. When File asks her name, she is ignored and suddenly realizes she cannot move, as if under a spell. The blonde then stares at her seriously and warns that with her current abilities, File would die instantly if she tried to enter the dungeon. The blonde notes that File managed to break free from the spell and comments that her magical power seems familiar. She then remembers having seen her years ago in the same dungeon. Aware of the danger of Yggdrasil, she questions why File returned. Even knowing the risks, File responds firmly that she needs to be there. Fale screams that he needs to find Ray, making his objective clear. The blonde girl asks if Ray is the white mage with white hair. She then asks if File is his friend. Unsure of how to respond, Fale hesitates and admits that maybe he's no longer considered a friend by Ray. The blonde girl asserts that Fale is indeed a friend of Ray, since he's willing to risk his life to find him. Fale hesitates, saying that not even sacrificing himself could bring Ray back. But the girl quickly rebukes him, telling him not to assume that Ray is dead alone. The girl reveals that Ray is alive and in good health. This surprises Fale, who becomes emotional. She informs him that he doesn't need to go there anymore, as S-rank monsters patrol the area. Finally, she explains that Ray decided to live within the dungeon, so there is no need to worry. Fale cries with relief upon learning that Ray is alive. He repeats it several times, overwhelmed with emotion. The girl watches him with a slight smile, commenting that, in the end, Ray still has a place to return to, someone who truly cares about him. The blonde girl confirms that she will leave Ray's belongings at the agreed-upon location, even though she doesn't fully understand the situation. File insists that she doesn't need to leave any message, just that the contents in the backpack are his things. She accepts the task and thanks him, while he watches her in silence, showing restrained gratitude. File hands the blonde girl a soul stone, a rare and valuable mineral, as payment. In exchange, he asks that if Ray decides to return to the outside world someday, she takes care of him. She accepts the request with a gentle smile, while File firmly holds his backpack, carrying the weight of hope. File sincerely thanks the blonde girl, calling her a cute little ghost, while holding his staff tightly. Knowing that Ray is alive relieves him, but it doesn't erase the guilt he carries. He accepts that what he did was unforgivable, and decides to live with this weight, feeling only saved by knowing that Ray is still out there, somewhere. The creature laughs maniacally as it releases a wave of power that throws the adventurers away. Fale is thrown against a wall and is severely injured. Her companion, Desperate, asks if she still has magic to continue fighting. Even injured, File confirms that she can still use magic, but the speed of the undead terror's attacks prevents her from finding an opening to cast her spell. When she finally tries to react, she is brutally hit by a direct blow, screaming in pain. File is thrown forcefully and falls to the ground, severely wounded. Her companion panics, shouting her name. The tension increases as the undead terror and the blonde exchange intense glances, and both realize that the next move could be decisive. The blonde is brutally thrown against a stone wall, losing consciousness after the impact. The undead terror watches with a perverse smile and comments how the adventurers are weaker than he imagined, while the rest of the group watches in shock, unable to react. The undead terror stares at the next two targets with a sadistic smile, warning them that it is their turn now. The blonde and the healer freeze for a second in the face of the threat. Suddenly, one of the group's companions takes advantage of an opening and jumps to protect the leader, landing a surprise attack and shouting that she's got him. The warrior lands a direct and powerful blow on the undead terror, splitting its body in half with a clean cut. However, instead of falling defeated, the creature simply falls apart, as if it were made of living mud. The group watches, shocked, as a hand regenerates and supports itself on the ground. The threat has clearly not been defeated. The warrior is confused to see the undead terror still standing. Before she can react, a tentacle pierces her chest. She can only make a sound of surprise before falling. The creature smiles with pleasure as the others scream her name, Desperate. The leader is in shock as he watches the group being massacred. He trembles, not understanding what's happening, while the others fall injured. Kanata shouts for him to react, warning that the enemy is right in front of them. Finally, he moves and raises an energy barrier to try to protect everyone. The barrier created by the leader is destroyed in an instant. A blade pierces his defense and brutally impales his body. He is thrown backward, bleeding, while Kanata watches in shock. The scene makes it clear that even the desperate effort was not enough to stop the attack. The leader is severely injured, screaming in pain as he tries to get up. Kanata rushes to him, desperate, but is pressured to heal him quickly. He, even while fallen and bleeding, shouts at her, demanding immediate healing. Desperation fills the scene, and the leader, eyes wide open, feels the enemy's approach. The leader, wounded and terrified, tries to negotiate with the enemy. He desperately pleads for his life, humiliating himself and offering his own companions in exchange for being spared. Kanata and the others are shocked by his cowardly attitude, not believing what they are hearing. The enemy simply watches in silence as an aura of tension grows in the air. The creature stares at the group with disgust and contempt, saying that their screams are too filthy to endure. Kanata turns around, surprised, as she realizes that she is the next target. The atmosphere grows even heavier as the creature makes a direct attack, showing no interest in mercy or dialogue. File, even severely injured, gathers the strength to cast a powerful attack spell, the Giga Flame. The flame spread violently across the battlefield, hitting the enemy. Kanata watches in shock while calling out to File, not understanding how he is still standing after everything. Even debilitated, File decides to act as bait to distract the undead terror and give Kanata time to heal the others. Determined, he thinks that at least he needs to ensure her escape. The creature, on the other hand, seems pleased to hear the next scream of pain and approaches with sadistic intent, focusing on File. File accepts his own fate as punishment for betraying a friend. Wounded and with no chance, he reflects on whether Ray would be satisfied to see the one who stabbed him in the back pay for it. With his body fallen and his staff on the ground, he hopes that somehow Ray finds peace knowing this. File remembers the day he abandoned Ray. He admits that he was more scared of the idea of dying than concerned with saving him. Being a wizard with demon blood, he knew he was hated by many and feared being discarded if he spoke out. His selfishness came from the fear of dying, and this fear spoke louder than the desire to protect his friend. File, severely injured, faces his destiny as punishment for what he did. He remembers Ray, the friend he abandoned, as a butterfly. A symbol of remembrance flies before his eyes. Amidst the pain and regret, he accepts his end as payment for leaving Ray behind. The protagonist wakes up startled, confused about where he is. Slowly, he remembers the fight against the undead terror and realizes with desperation that he has lost his right arm and left leg. The pain and shock take over as he notices his limbs are truly gone, a high price for the brutal battle he faced. The boy wakes up in a clinic and the responsible doctor informs him that he is under the effect of painkillers and magic. Desperate, he begs her to heal his lost arm and leg, offering any amount of money. She explains that she's not capable, but she knows someone who might be able to help. The doctor reveals that only Raiden Huel can help the boy, which shocks him, as he thought Ray was dead. When he tries to defend himself, saying that he hasn't killed anyone, she confronts him with the fact that 5 people died in 5 years. She emphasizes that killing comrades is a serious crime and introduces herself as the leader of a guild recognized by the king. The woman accuses the boy of causing the death of 5 white mages in a class that rarely dies, which raises suspicions. She says he used Kanata as a shield and even sold his own companions to the monster. All of this came to light thanks to Kanata's own report. The boy, desperate, tries to justify himself. The woman explodes in anger, accusing the boy of being responsible for the deaths of their friends and making it clear that he will not get away with it. She says that, in any case, he's already finished as an adventurer. The boy, confused and scared, starts thinking about his companions and wonders what happened to them. The boy receives the harsh reality. Suglenst is in a coma, Jimeno lost her arm and left leg and is also blind, and Fail is missing, presumably dead. The woman then concludes by saying that the renowned adventuring party, Gunkino Dongwa, which he was so proud of, is practically destroyed. He is in complete shock with the gravity of the situation. With a shocked face and no hope, the boy finally understands. His journey as an adventurer is over. During the night, a powerful magic is cast violently, crossing the sky like a destructive lightning bolt. The impact of the magical energy explodes in the forest. And amidst the debris, Ray appears before a grotesque monster with multiple mouths and tentacles, ready to face the creature without hesitation. The monster distorts its own flesh and laughs, macabrely repeating that it wants to play. Ray watches it seriously, recognizing the type of creature he's dealing with, a liquid entity likely more difficult to confront with conventional attacks. The liquid monster regenerates quickly with each cut, as if nothing affects it. Its form constantly changes, and it still seems full of magical power. Ray realizes he's facing a creature that has already devoured many humans and monsters, which explains its absurd strength and resilience. Even in the face of the monster's constant regeneration, Ray doesn't retreat. He charges forward with quick and precise strikes, trying to find an opening. In the midst of the fight, he wonders why such a powerful creature would be here, in a place where monsters of this level shouldn't appear. Ray narrowly dodges a brutal attack, surprised to realize the identity of the enemy. The Terror of the Dead, a legendary creature known to inhabit the surroundings of the Demon King's castle. This type of high-ranking monster shouldn't be here, which only heightens the gravity of the situation. Ray starts to suspect that the monster isn't here by chance. He remembers that the creature released excess magic, as if trying to draw attention on purpose. Observing the enemy's behavior, he wonders if he's being tested by someone using him as a guinea pig. Ray concludes that he's being watched by someone. He imagines that if the monster is being controlled, the responsible party must be a high-ranking demon or something similar. With this in mind, he prepares to act, aware that he's dealing with a much greater threat than it seemed at first. Ray decides he cannot prolong the fight, as he has no way of tracking who's watching him. He remembers that Liana is waiting for him, and that he needs to finish everything quickly. Even though he doesn't want to reveal his abilities, he acknowledges that the enemy is an S-rank monster, perhaps even above that. The protagonist decides it's time to take the fight seriously. He invokes his dark power and charges fully at the liquid monster, which until then had been resisting all attacks. The creature tries to counterattack, but is surprised by the speed and precision of the boy, who slices its tentacles cleanly, one by one. Even with its regeneration ability, the monster begins to be overwhelmed. The protagonist moves strategically, not giving the enemy time to recover. It's an intense exchange of blows, with the protagonist gradually dominating the pace of the battle. The protagonist, after evaluating the creature's power and realizing he's being watched, decides to stop holding back and take the fight seriously. He charges at the monster with fast and violent attacks, causing massive damage and trying to break through its defenses. Even with the creature's constant regeneration, he doesn't retreat. During the battle, he identifies the monster's core, its weak point, and develops a precise strategy to strike it. Determined and focused, he charges forward, aiming directly at the core, ready to finish the fight once and for all. The protagonist realizes that he cannot prolong the fight and decides to get serious. With speed and precision, he attacks the liquid monster without hesitation, dodging its tentacles and delivering cuts at high speed. Even with the creature's rapid regeneration, he manages to identify the core, the true weakness of the enemy. Concentrating all his power, he invokes the technique Aura Lance Ray and charges for the final attack. The energy lance pierces the monster with devastating force, striking the core squarely and ending the battle with a decisive blow. After defeating the creature, the protagonist collects the broken core of the monster, called Undead Terror. He examines the item and recognizes its value, commenting that he can use it to forge a weapon or sell it for a good price. Decided, he keeps the core with him. Shortly after defeating the monster, the protagonist is surprised by the appearance of a girl named Liana. She emerges from the bushes, shocked and emotional, impressed by his strength. Astonished, she comments on how he managed to defeat the undead terror instantly, calling him amazing. Liana continues to be impressed, saying that he destroyed the monster's core with a single strike and still managed to dodge its fast tentacles. The protagonist responds simply, saying that he has faced this type of creature before. Meanwhile, he thinks that, despite being strong, the undead terrors are common in the middle floors of the Yggdrasil labyrinth, and that the monsters in the lower floors were even more dangerous. After the confrontation, the group decides to rest and continue their journey the next morning. While the others move away, the protagonist remains thoughtful for a moment. Liana calls him, snapping him out of his trance, and he responds, saying he's on his way. As they walk, the protagonist invites Liana to eat sweets together when they reach the capital. Surprised and a little embarrassed, she says she would love to go, revealing that she really likes desserts and knows a good place. They agree to sell the monster's core and use the money to enjoy themselves together. With the sun setting, the protagonist decides it's time to camp right there. But before he can act, Liana appears running and shouting excitedly. He thinks it might be a monster, but she excitedly reveals that she has found a village nearby. The group arrives at a massive wall with strange symbols. Liana asks if this is really a village, and the protagonist confirms. She is so relieved that she almost loses her strength and nearly falls but quickly recovers, saying she's fine and that she just felt a little weak. The protagonist takes Liana's hand to help her up, commenting that it's normal to be tired after walking all day. He explains that in the past, monster attacks caused many deaths, which is why they built walls with stones containing divine power to protect villages. Admiring the fortifications, they decide to search for the entrance gate. In front of the village gate, Liana offers to go ask for it to be opened. The protagonist agrees, saying that it's the only entrance and exit. However, when she starts to walk away, he urgently calls her back, saying he needs to say something important. Liana stops, confused by his reaction. The protagonist extends his hand and activates something in front of the gate while Liana watches silently. A barrier made of divine power appears, glowing. He realizes that this gate, just like the walls, was created with this same holy power. Shortly after, his body is repelled by the barrier, as if he had been attacked. Liana is surprised to see this happen. The barrier rejects anyone with magical power, such as monsters and demons. The protagonist uses magic to heal his wounded hand after being repelled by the barrier. He comments that even humans can be rejected. Liana is shocked and apologizes, saying she didn't know about it. He reassures her, explaining that these barriers are mainly made to keep monsters and demons away, so it's natural she didn't know. He also reminds her that it's her first time seeing a divine gate. As the protagonist and Liana stare at the gate, a giant magical eye appears in front of them, causing a slight tremor. This eye analyzes those on the other side as part of the gate's magical defense. After the analysis, the protagonist realizes they are authorized to enter, and they both proceed toward the opening gate. As soon as they enter through the gate, a hooded enemy appears out of nowhere and charges at the protagonist with a sword in hand, aiming directly at him. He reacts, surprised by the sudden approach. Liana, scared, screams as the attack is about to happen. The attacker halts the strike after taking a closer look at the protagonist and Liana. He realizes they are indeed humans and calms down, easing the tension of the moment. Liana still seems nervous, while the protagonist observes seriously, not lowering his guard. The knight lowers his weapon and apologizes, explaining that he sensed a very strong magical reaction and thought they were demons in disguise. He introduces himself as Atra, a diamond-ranked holy knight and also the guardian of the divine tree at the village gate. The protagonist is surprised and compliments Atra for having such a significant responsibility at such a young age. The protagonist tries to appear humble, saying he was lucky and still inexperienced. However, Atra, noticing his actions, thinks that he is someone very capable and believes that only someone with great mastery of divine power could activate the gate. He apologizes again for the misunderstanding and offers to help them find good accommodation, as the restaurants are closed and he can only offer water at the moment. The protagonist introduces himself as Ray and says that the girl with him is Liana. He thanks Atra for their warm welcome, especially since it's late at night. Liana also thanks him, while Ray comments that they were lost in the forest. Atra is surprised to hear this and says it's impressive that they're still alive. Ray then decides to tell the truth about what happened. Ray listens as Atra reveals that the village is facing a serious problem. A demon has been attacking the place for months. The scene shows a sinister claw dragging across the ground, suggesting the presence of this creature. Ray is surprised to hear this and tries to understand the gravity of the situation better. Atra explains that the demon tormenting the village is a type of werewolf, known as a human wolf. He shares that the villagers have been targeted by this creature for months. Ray comments that they didn't see anything like that on their way here, and asks if this monster is really that strong. Atra responds that if they had encountered the werewolf, they probably wouldn't be alive to tell the tale. Ray comments that werewolves are classified as a C- level threat, which should be easy to handle. He deduces that if the country knew about the danger, they would have already sent holy knights. Atra confirms, saying they did send 4 diamond-ranked knights, but something went wrong. Ray realizes that most likely even those knights couldn't defeat the monster. Atra reveals that the 4 knights were killed by the werewolves. In fact, it wasn't just one enemy. There are 3 werewolves attacking the village. Ray is shocked by this revelation. Atra continues explaining that because of this, the village is completely isolated, unable to leave or ask for help, and the villagers are running out of food. Atra explains that the 4 knights sent never returned, and that's why the kingdom hasn't sent reinforcements. The village's situation is getting worse, and he's not sure how much longer they can hold out. While Ray and Liana listen in silence, Atra reveals that, in addition to the werewolves, there is another serious problem in the village. Something hard to believe. Atra reveals the second major problem of the village. People are disappearing one after another, without leaving traces or signs of struggle. This phenomenon began around the same time the werewolf attacks started, but the villagers and the village chief believe it isn't related to them. At first, Atra thought it was the work of the werewolves, but now he's not so sure. Ray and Liana are shocked to hear all this. Ray asks if Atra really believes that the disappearances have nothing to do with the werewolves. Atra hesitates, but eventually reveals what he truly thinks. He believes there's a spy within the village, someone who is collaborating with the werewolves. Outside the village, 3 werewolves watch from a distance and talk amongst themselves. They discuss the white-haired man, wondering if he's really the one who defeated someone named Vegan. Their expressions are serious, indicating that they view the protagonist as a potential threat. As the werewolves discuss, a mysterious hooded figure appears before them. It's revealed that this person is Alfirksama, one of the 4 mortal demons. His presence commands immediate respect, and his subtle smile indicates that something sinister is about to happen. As the protagonist reflects on the situation, he thinks about the 3 werewolves and the mysterious disappearances in the village. Atra thanks them for listening to all of this right after their arrival, and begins to talk about something important that will happen that night. Before he can continue, a girl enters excitedly, calling Atra Oni-chan, interrupting the tense atmosphere of the conversation. 2 children, Shu and Liz, arrive bringing dinner for Atra. He thanks them warmly, clearly used to their presence. Ray, curious, asks if they are Atra's children, but he quickly denies, saying they are not. The children smile and seem very close to him, showing a relationship of trust between them. Atra explains that Shu and Liz are the children of the innkeeper. The children introduce themselves with excited smiles, asking for the names of the newcomers. Ray responds calmly, saying his name and Liana's. She is a bit shy, but also introduces herself. Liz smiles and holds her hand, saying it's a pleasure to meet them, making Liana feel a little embarrassed but happy with the warm reception. Atra explains that, because he needs to be on duty, he always asks the children to bring him his meals. Ray compliments Shu and Liz, saying they are amazing, which makes the 2 excited and smiling. Atra asks them to take Ray and Liana to the inn. The children are thrilled with the task, especially knowing that their mother will be happy to have guests again. Liz grabs Liana's hand excitedly and begins pulling her, saying she will take her to the inn. Liana is a little startled by the enthusiasm, but goes along. Meanwhile, Atra reminds Ray about when he mentioned recommending a good inn, now revealing that it's the one run by the children's mother. Atra emphasizes that the inn is great, with affordable prices and a large bath. Ray says there's no reason to refuse and decides they'll spend the night there. He also mentions that he's excited about the idea. The final scene shows a wide view of the village at night, conveying a calmer atmosphere after all the revelations. Later that night, Ray and Liana arrive with Shu and Liz at the inn. The children run inside and call out excitedly to their mother, announcing that they got clients. The innkeeper's reaction is pure surprise, barely believing that they actually have guests after such a long time. Ray and Liana enter, still catching their breath from the walk. The innkeeper Shinoka greets the visitors with a smile, even though she's still out of breath from the rush. She introduces herself and thanks them for choosing to stay, commenting that the number of clients has dropped significantly recently. Ray apologizes for the sudden visit, saying that luckily they didn't encounter any of the werewolves on the way. Shinoka is surprised they managed to arrive, as there are dangerous demons wandering outside the village. Shinoka comments that other villagers have tried to leave in search of help, but they were quickly killed by the werewolves. She is impressed that Ray and Liana managed to make it there alive. She believes that the werewolves have a sharp sense of smell, which makes them even more dangerous. Meanwhile, Ray reflects on everything he's heard so far and concludes that if these monsters really have such a good sense of smell, they probably already know that he and Liana are there. As Shinoka prepares to take them to their room, Ray reflects on something strange. He also has a good magical sense and didn't feel any demonic presence on the way. This makes him wonder if the werewolves were really nearby or if something else is happening. Before going upstairs, he asks Shinoka for more information, wanting to understand better the events and victims of the last few months in the village. Liana observes silently, following the seriousness of the moment. In the inn room, Liana begins to mentally organize the information they receive from Shinoka. She explains that the werewolves started appearing near the Vaudan village about 3 months ago. The first victim was a young girl who went out hunting and never returned the next day. This marked the beginning of the disappearances linked to the attacks. Liana continues explaining the events. The first body found was only the head of the missing girl, left in front of the Divine Gate. From the condition, they concluded that her body was devoured. After that, the men of the village formed a group to try to eliminate the werewolves, but all of them died in the battle. Days later, another group went out to seek help and was also completely annihilated. Atra had mentioned that even 3 holy knights were sent, but they ended up dead too. Ray thinks about the case of the disappearances, and Liana confirms that it all started around the same time as the attacks. 28 people have gone missing, all men, without leaving a trace. She emphasizes that the village is protected by the Divine Gate, which theoretically should prevent any evil creature from entering. Still, people continue disappearing. Ray remains suspicious, as there is no evidence so far that the werewolves managed to infiltrate the village. Ray comments that the disappearances began after the werewolves showed up, and it's hard to believe that the two things aren't connected. He remembers that Atra suspects there's a spy inside the village. Liana asks if he also believes this, and Ray confirms, saying that this spy could be a werewolf in disguise, or even a demon. Before he can finish his sentence, someone knocks on the door. Shinoka appears at the door and announces that dinner is ready. Ray and Liana go downstairs and observe the meal served, but remain silent, with serious expressions. The atmosphere is still heavy with the previous conversation about spies and demons in disguise, keeping them on alert, even in front of the food. Ray and Liana are surprised by the amount of food served, as they had heard about the scarcity in the village. Shinoka confirms that they are indeed going through this, but insists they should enjoy it, as they are the first clients in months. Grateful, the two sit down to eat. Shinoka politely excuses herself and leaves the room, while Ray watches with a thoughtful gaze. Shu and Liz appear at the door, embarrassed after Shu's stomach growls loudly because of the food's smell. When Ray asks if they've already had dinner, the two say they only ate a piece of bread, explaining that they can't eat much. Seeing this, Ray invites them to join the table, leaving the two surprised. Ray says he's not hungry and offers his portion of the meal to Shu and Liz, making them very excited. But before, he asks them to promise something, to divide everything equally between them. The children agree with a smile, happy that they can eat a little more. Shu and Liz celebrate happily and start eating eagerly. Shinoka appears surprised when she sees the scene and scolds the children, saying they shouldn't disturb the guests. But Ray quickly explains that he was the one who offered the food, easing the situation. Meanwhile, the children continue eating non-stop, visibly starving. Shinoka, embarrassed, says she will deduct the cost of the food given to the children from their payment. But Ray insists that she charge the full amount, saying that the meal was served to him, and he just chose not to eat it. Shinoka thanks him emotionally for the kindness, while Ray responds with a relaxed smile. Ray comments that he noticed how close Atra is to the children, and Shinoka confirms, saying that they like him a lot and always play together. She expresses her gratitude for this, believing that Atra also feels grateful for her and her children. The scene reinforces the bond of affection and trust between Atra and the family. Liana comments with a smile that Atra naturally got close to the children, since they always brought him food. Shinoka hesitates for a moment, but reveals something more serious. Atra had a family that lived in another city. Meanwhile, a scene shows someone opening a drawer with documents, suggesting that something else is being investigated or hidden. Ray discovers that Atra had a family and children around Shu and Liz's age, but they were all killed by demons. The scene shows Atra holding a frame with a picture of his family, revealing the pain he carries. Ray understands the reason for Atra's affection for the children and silently reflects on the loss he suffered. Atra was warned that the city where his family lived was in danger. Even so, he decided to stay in the village, saying that the divine portal wouldn't work if he left. He chose to protect the place as the guardian of the divine tree, even though he had lost his family to the demons. Ray watches everything and understands that the reason Atra is so close to Shu and Liz is precisely because of this pain he carries, having lost important people. Ray walks down the corridor already thinking about taking a bath and resting. He begins to prepare, but looks to the side and remembers that he is sharing the room with Liana, something he didn't expect and would rather avoid. Still, he proceeds with his plan to relax after everything that happened. Ray tries to explain that as a man, it would be strange to share the room, but Liana had already made it clear that this was an issue for her too. In the end, they end up sharing the room anyway. While organizing his things, he thinks about sleeping on the floor to let her have the bed. When he mentions the bath, something suddenly catches his attention. Liana stands still in silence, with a thoughtful and somewhat hesitant expression. Ray notices something is off and asks if she has a stomachache or if the food was bad. She replies that the food was delicious and thanks him, but still seems a little bothered by something. Liana starts scolding Ray for giving his food to the children, saying that the meal was for him, not for others. She tightly grabs his hand and apologizes, looking worried. Ray tries to reassure her, saying it's okay, as he had been surviving only on dried meat. But Liana insists, saying it would be a problem if he fainted from hunger. Ray says that Liana doesn't need to apologize. He explains that he doesn't feel hunger that often because of his body. He then reveals that he was a slave when he was a child, and that's why he was always hungry, since they never gave him enough food. Ray remembers someone who saved him in the past. It was a girl who was also a slave, but even though she was starving, she always shared her food with him. She used to say that a boy needed to eat a lot to grow. Ray says that now it's his turn to become like the person who helped him in the past. Liana, touched by his attitude, says that he is a very kind person. A bit awkwardly, he asks if she really thinks so, and she confirms with a smile. Ray praises Liana for the kindness she showed to the children, saying that this gesture will stay in their memories. He states that what she did was something wonderful. While watching her from behind, Ray thinks that Liana cares a lot about what others think of her. Ray observes Liana and realizes that she is always attentive, trying to speak well of others, and avoiding acting impulsively. He notices that this seems strange for someone so young, but he understands that it's because of how she was raised, as a slave. Ray thinks about Liana's past and assumes that she was trained to be a luxury slave. He believes she went through many hardships and carries a deep wound that she tries to hide as a way of protecting herself. This reminds him of himself, when he did the same in the past to avoid further pain. Ray thinks that even though Liana still has the slave mark engraved on her skin, she is now just a 12-year-old girl with no more shackles. He wants to remove the symbolic chains that still bind her and allow her to live freely. When he calls her name, she turns around, surprised, not knowing what he will say. Ray says that, even though he made a contract with Liana, he is not her master. Liana is initially surprised and unresponsive, but then she agrees, still somewhat confused. Ray then approaches, about to do something, implying that he will reinforce this idea of freedom. Ray places his hand on Liana's head, with a calm smile, and says that she doesn't need to be afraid. He thinks that he wants her to find her own path one day, not as a slave, but as someone free, living for herself. Liana just responds with a shy, okay. Meanwhile, he decides that he will continue to stay by her side, protecting her, at least until that moment arrives. The boy enjoys a hot bath, relaxing alone in the waters of the place, thinking about how crowded it would be if not for the problem with the werewolves. Suddenly, he notices someone entering the bath. Turning, he sees Liana, and the two stare at each other, surprised and visibly embarrassed by the unexpected situation. Liana, still visibly nervous, questions why the boy is in the bath, even after she offered for him to go first. He, completely confused by the situation, tries to understand what she meant, while she becomes more and more embarrassed by the confusion. The boy is completely frozen when he realizes the unexpected situation. Liana, not knowing where to hide, begins to desperately explain that she only wanted to help him with his bath. With her face completely red, she runs out of the place. The boy is startled by the situation and tries to stop Liana, saying that she doesn't need to do anything out of obligation. But she shows that she is concerned and wants to return all the help she received. The boy understands what she feels, but is torn about everything. The boy remembers when he did everything to be useful, afraid that he would no longer be needed. Now, seeing the girl's desire to help, he understands this feeling and decides to accept. With a light smile, he asks for something simple, for her to wash his back. The girl gets excited about the idea of helping, but the boy panics a bit with her enthusiasm and tries to explain that it wasn't necessary. She, determined, insists and pulls him to start, while he tries to stay calm, completely unsure how to react to the situation. The girl asks if he thinks he will have a chance to defeat the werewolves. He responds calmly, saying that they are easier than the previous enemy, but the problem is fighting against several at the same time. He explains that werewolves are fast and agile, and if one of them escapes, it can call reinforcements, which would complicate the situation. He also mentions that there's something else that still worries him, but he doesn't say what it is. The boy begins to explain in more detail. He says that werewolves only live in the demon realm, far from human territory. He recalls that this realm is protected by great barriers, which should theoretically prevent these beings from entering the human world. He finds it strange that they are showing up around here, and this only raises more suspicions about the disappearances case. He continues explaining that the werewolves didn't pass through the magical barriers, but instead came through a dungeon. This surprises the girl, who had never heard of this before. The boy then explains that there are two types of demons that appear in human territory: those born here and those that come from dungeons. In this case, the werewolves belong to the second type, which raises new concerns about the origin of the problem. While the two are still talking, the boy reveals that there is a dungeon that directly connects the human realm to the demon realm. The girl remembers this and confirms with excitement. He explains that 3 years ago, a group of high-level adventurers found this entrance and brought proof of the place. That's how the existence of this route became known, although the government has never revealed which dungeon exactly it was. The boy understands that the powerful monster, the undead terror, likely used this secret route between the realms to reach human territory. He begins to think about the possibility of other dangerous monsters having crossed this path as well. Then he thanks Liana for the information and says that it was very helpful. During the night, an elder appears in the corridor and introduces himself as the village chief, Okiyus. He apologizes for interrupting the traveler's rest and gets straight to the point. He confirms that the village is being threatened by werewolves and wants to understand if their visit is related to this problem. The village chief explains that the knights who came to protect them are dead. The village is running out of food and resources, and no one can escape. Although the fortress with the divine gate is still holding off the attacks, it's just a matter of time before everything collapses. He then makes a request to the travelers. When they leave, they should inform the knights in the capital about what's going on. The boy responds that he understands the request and confirms that they were already heading to the capital. He promises to inform the knights about the village's situation and says he will make an official request for reinforcements. The village chief thanks him emotionally, holding his hand and saying that they are the only hope for the people there. While they are talking, a man arrives bringing a message. He says he didn't want to rush them, but he received something important. The message came directly from Atra, the guardian of the divine tree. The boy is surprised to learn that the message was specifically for him. The elder explains that, according to Atra, it would be safer to leave the village that night, since he didn't sense the presence of werewolves nearby. The protagonist comments that he had already heard about the disappearances from Atra and Shinoka. The village chief confirms that, for some reason, some men have been disappearing during the night. The village chief admits that he doesn't know why only men are disappearing. He warns that, being a man himself, it could be risky for the protagonist to stay in the village, even though the werewolves are a bigger threat outside. At this, the girl gets nervous and asks what they should do, while the protagonist stops to think about the situation. The boy begins to reflect on the connection between the werewolves and the disappearances. Even though it's already night, he decides that it's better to leave immediately. The girl agrees without hesitation and says she will accompany him. Their decision surprises the villagers. The children suddenly appear and ask if they are leaving already, visibly sad. The girl says she wanted to spend more time with them that night. The boy apologizes but promises to return to play with them in the future. He crouches down and asks them to be there when he returns. Before leaving, the boy calls the village chief and says he wants to ask something. The elder, curious, agrees to listen. Meanwhile, a woman reprimands the chief. telling him not to make exaggerated requests of the travelers. Outside the village, the boy and the girl walk to a meeting point. A man in armor approaches and apologizes for the sudden notice. The boy responds that it's fine, while the girl calls this man Atrasan. The hooded man warns that leaving at midnight is dangerous, but this might be their only chance to leave the village. He apologizes, and the boy asks him not to worry about it. Then, the boy asks if it's true that he doesn't feel the presence of the werewolves, and the man confirms with a brief, yes. Atra explains that he used his aura ability to scan the area around when he learned they hadn't encountered any werewolves upon arrival. He says that the monsters are likely absent for some reason, and that this was the best moment to leave the village. The boy understands the situation and, with Liana, thanks him for his hospitality. The farewell continues with Atra emphasizing that this was the safest time to leave, as in less than an hour, they would be outside the werewolf territory. He wishes for them to reach the capital safely and asks them to inform the knights about the village's situation. The boy assures that he will fulfill the mission. The boy and the girl leave the village gates at night, watched by a guard. They walk through the forest while a mysterious figure seems to be following them discreetly, approaching through the trees. The werewolves observe the full moon at the top of a mountain, realizing that the obstacle is out of the way. Now alone, they talk among themselves about what to do with the villagers, considering attacking and acting with cruelty. As the werewolves discuss what to do, one of them says it would be boring just to devour the villagers, preferring to see them suffer first. Another, suspicious, reminds them that a strong ally has already been defeated by that same traveler, which makes him cautious. Still, one of them reinforces that Alfric's order was to leave them alone, considering the boy just a common traveler. The werewolves begin to debate whether or not they should attack the couple. One of them shows special interest in the girl, sensing a strong magical power in her. However, another warns that the knights may appear at any moment, as they started patrolling the villages in the region. They conclude that if they are to act, they need to do so quickly and finish off all the villagers before the guard arrives. The werewolves celebrate the fact that they no longer need to act in secret. Now, with the way clear, they plan to attack at will. One of them says he's been keeping an eye on some of the village children, while another comments that they've already eliminated the men who could have interfered. They seem excited about the idea of attacking the villagers without restrictions. The werewolves realize that the only remaining man in the village is weak, and the rest are women and children. Excited about the situation, they prepare to attack, talking about making a party that night. They rush together, thrilled about what's to come. The women watch in terror as a werewolf approaches. He appears before them with an intimidating posture, standing next to the body of someone who has already been defeated, making it clear that the attack on the village has begun. The girls realize that the village guardian has been defeated and panic. When they see the werewolf advancing with his claws, they scream and run desperately, trying to escape. The atmosphere becomes even tenser as the danger approaches quickly. The werewolves invade the village and give no time for reaction. One of the villagers tries to warn everyone to flee, but it's too late. They block the only exit, making it clear that no one will escape. The tension overwhelms the villagers as the enemies draw closer. One of the werewolves throws a woman to the ground brutally. He states that this is no longer a village, but a prison for everyone. The sense of desperation grows as the villagers realize they are completely surrounded and have no way out. One of the werewolves finishes his statement, calling the village a cage. Meanwhile, another rushes to attack with his claws extended, aiming at the villagers. The scene shows the despair on the people's faces as they realize the imminent danger. One of the villagers tries to attack the werewolf with a knife, but he easily holds the blade, showing no concern. He mocks the attempt and, with one move, throws her far away. She falls to the ground, terrified, while he says he wants to have some fun before doing anything. The woman tries to stay calm in the face of the threat, but the werewolf says he'll attack the children first, just so she can hear their screams. When he realizes where they are, the woman panics and screams for Shu and Liz to run, trying to protect them even in the midst of fear. At the moment when the werewolf threatens the woman and the children, he is surprised by a knife that hits his body. The pain makes him scream loudly, and he starts to panic when he realizes the blade is embedded in him, not understanding where it came from. A hooded warrior appears, saying that, unlike what he thought, that scream was only an annoyance. The hooded warrior charges firmly and drives the knife into the werewolf, knocking him down with force. The enemy recognizes who is before him, but can't finish his sentence. With a cold look, the warrior orders him to stay silent. The hooded boy approaches and apologizes for the delay, while the woman, still shaken, thanks him for saving her. The werewolf watches, confused and angry, questioning why the white-haired boy is here, since he thought he had left. He notices something wrong in his mouth, becoming even more furious. The boy stares at the werewolf seriously and says that he needs to teach some manners to ill-mannered dogs. The werewolf, furious at the provocation, charges with rage, ready to attack.